Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
All right. Welcome, gentlemen, to another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications, at Scott McKay on Twitter, Scott McKay on YouTube, Real Scott McKay on Instagram. The Facebook group is the Mountaintop Summit. And as always, you can find us on www.mountaintoppodcast.com. With me today is a new friend of mine. His name is Jim Wolfe, and he spent the last 3 years in Thailand, which is a nice place to spend 3 years. It's a nice place to spend any amount of time at all, actually, as long as you eat the right food and don't get the crud. But apart from that, Thailand is a wonderful place that a lot of people go to enjoy the good life, and that's what he's doing right now with his beautiful and sexy girlfriend of his. And he is also the author of a book with the auspicious title, The Happiest Man in Hollywood. And the topic du jour is keeping her in love with you. So without any further ado, Jim Wolfe, welcome, man.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, man, it's good to get to know you. You seem like one of the good guys in the world of men's dating and seduction advice. And of course, as we all know from previous episodes, seduction can be a very good thing for both men and women. Now, the URL of his website is datingadviceforomenwholovewomen.com, which is, of course, a concept that I can fully support. Sounds a lot like what we do around here. But what I'm going to do for you guys at the end is give you a shortcut like I always do. And in the meantime, we're going to talk about, like I said, keeping her in love with you. But the name of that book, Mr. Jim Wolfe, what is The Happiest Man in Hollywood about? It's not about the entertainment industry, obviously.
No, it's not. It's about how to attract, keep, and build a great relationship with the right woman for you, which I think you've emphasized in previous episodes for sure. And the reason I chose the name The Happiest Man in Hollywood is I think that there's a lot of celebrities in Hollywood that have kind of bad relationships. And maybe it's just because they're in the news more often. But I chose The Happiest Man in Hollywood to kind of contrast how to have a healthy, satisfying relationship with a woman who's in love with you versus what a lot of celebrities experience, which is kind of these bad relationships that end up all over the press. And I also really love the book, The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason.
Definitely sounds like that title.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was kind of loosely inspired by that. And I wanted to make a dating and relationship book for men that's kind of in that similar vein.
Now, you're talking about Hollywood celebs, and obviously we see the tabloids where couples break up spectacularly, and then sometimes a story turns up like about Alice Cooper and his wife. His real name is Vince something, by the way. And this guy was, the most evil looking and sounding rocker from the 70s, School's Out and all those songs. And yet he's been married to this woman for 42 years faithfully. And Alice Cooper doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs, and is actually a man of faith. And he and his wife have had this storybook marriage for over 42 years. Isn't that amazing?
Wow. That's incredible.
She's with him all the time. They're inseparable. They just absolutely adore each other. There was just a story about the two of them. So I'm reminded that even in the context of Hollywood, a good relationship can work out if it's the right woman and the guy knows how to keep her in love with him, right?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think actually the research that I've seen shows that only about 10 to 30% of relationships are happy, healthy, and functional in general. And so I think that's just kind of reflected through the celebrity culture, and we see it more because it's in the media. But I think having a good relationship with a woman is a very hard thing to do in general.
Well, yeah, definitely. You have to have the right woman, and in order to do that, you have to know who you want, and you also have to deserve what you want, which is what we talk about at length around here, which is the idea of being the right person for the person you want to attract, being the kind of person that the person you dream of will be dreaming of in return. And yet, in Hollywood, there's such a massive public spotlight on people. The more of an A-lister you are, the more pressure there is on your relationship because it's under a microscope. I mean, it isn't only out in public, but everybody wants to know every detail of everything that's going on. and, someone finds out that you're not really the father of your daughter, and oh my God, everybody's talking about it, and people are talking about you behind your back, and people have takes on it on news shows that can be potentially hurtful.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that the more famous a person you are in Hollywood, the harder it is to hold your relationship together, because it's just subject to phenomena that quote unquote average people who are under the radar don't ever have to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's pressure enough, and then even more if you're a celebrity, for sure.
Now, interestingly, I don't know if you feel this as a dating coach with some notoriety. When you're in a good, healthy relationship, on one hand, it's kind of your proof of concept. It's like, hey, look, I have a track record. I know how to get hot, sexy women into my life. And look, here's one who actually stuck around for going on 14 years in my case. Mm-hmm. And yet, you have that pressure to keep that relationship going, because certainly in my case, our brand is built so much around Emily and I, and the idea of having a good, healthy relationship. And of course, the impact on our brand, were we ever to break up, would be just devastating, I would think. I mean, maybe people don't give a rat's ass. I mean, certainly other people have gotten divorced and treated their significant others poorly and still managed to make a living doing dating advice. But I don't think they've advertised their relationship quite the way we have. And yet we really don't ever feel that pressure because we are in the right relationship. But I'll tell you, kind of on the flip side, the fact that we're immersed all day long, every day, in the art and science of dating and relationships helps us strengthen our relationship, because we learn more about how to relate. And we, as Cisco Systems used to say, we eat our own dog food around here. Mm-hmm. In real life, we cook better than that, literally. But figuratively, we live what we talk about. We walk the talk, not only because we're forced to, but because we're getting better at it because we're so immersed in it. Do you find that going on as you teach guys how to keep the right woman in love with them? Is it helping to keep the woman in your life more in love with you? I mean, are you eating your own dog food over there in Thailand?
100%. And I think that brings up a lot of interesting things. Like, one of the reasons I got so interested in this topic in the first place is because, my parents were divorced when I was young, and that was painful. And then later on, I had kind of a hard time keeping women around. And so through my own learning, I figured out how to do that for myself. And now I'm sharing that. And so the more I share that information with other people, like you're saying, the easier it gets for me to do it in my own life. And I don't want to be a hypocrite. I want to do all of the stuff that I say as well. It's very important to me, like it is to you and your wife, to kind of walk the talk instead of just pontificating and then having a crappy relationship over here on the side. And so it does motivate me to do as well as I can in my relationships. And then on the other hand, on the other side of that, I used to think that getting divorced was a horrible thing, or, breaking up was a horrible thing. And now I think that it's important to shift your goals as a man or even as a woman from trying to stay with someone to trying to create a healthy, satisfying relationship that's good for both people. And if that's not possible because of the other person, then there's not really anything you can do about that. And so maybe you should break up or get divorced. And so I kind of see both sides of that.
Well, in all fairness, if you want to make that divorce not a big deal, make sure that you take care of strengthening that relationship and making that healthy before you go and make any children.
Oh, yeah.
Because once the kids come along, relationships are neither easy nor inexpensive nor breezy. It's going to be a big, hairy deal. But lest we dive down that rabbit hole, which would be a whole completely different podcast, I got to go back and say there are people who write newsletters about dating advice, and they're throwing their wives and their husbands under the bus in their own newsletter to their own audience.
Yeah.
I mean, one guy took my breath away one time when I used to get his newsletter. He said, well, my wife really wasn't my first choice, and I always envisioned myself being married to someone else. But since we're together, we're building the best relationship we can. And he just said that to like 50 or 60,000 people.
Wow.
Like, dude, what are you doing? And, as they say here in Texas, he's saying that in his outside voice, which is a wonderful Texas colloquialism.
Yeah, I love it.
But that's rooted in having a less than perfect mindset about that whole relationship, probably before even entering into it. What about that mindset? What mindset should we have before we even meet a woman to make sure that when we do, she's going to be the right woman, which, ostensibly is going to make it easier for her to stay in love with us because, we chose her. I mean, women follow our lead, right? So it makes perfect sense that if we're kind of lukewarm about her, we can't expect her to be really excited about us, right?
Yeah, and I don't think it's very loving to someone else if you're settling for them. And especially if you're communicating that to them in everything that you do and communicating it to a huge audience. I think that's not very healthy and it's not very loving towards the other person. And I think on the flip side of that, the mindset that you're talking about, in my opinion, if you already feel like you are whole and complete yourself, I think there's this big myth in our society that people complete each other when they get married. I don't buy into that. I think that each individual person is whole and complete on their own. And if you know that about yourself already, there's nothing missing. You're looking for someone to add something to your life, not to make it complete, then you have a little bit healthier outlook and you're not going to end up settling because you're already pretty happy with how things are already. If you're living a full life that you love, you're doing things that you enjoy to do, you feel whole and complete yourself, and you don't feel like anything's missing inside yourself or in your life, then when you meet a woman, you're not going to settle for her if she's not the kind of person that's right for you. And so I think it's pretty hard to work on yourself and make your own life good. But I think that's actually the first step in having a healthy relationship. And if that guy was able to do that, then I don't think he would probably end up being with that woman.
Isn't it amazing how people build entire relationships on cliches?
Yeah.
Like, he and I complete each other. They don't even know what it means when they say that. If you say, well, what does that even mean? They're going to go, he was part of the puzzle. I was part of the puzzle. And together we made a puzzle. Isn't it cute? It's like, okay. And how did you two choose each other? And then, people use other cliches, just dropping them innocently. Like, oh, she's my ball and chain. She's my old lady. And, we kind of just put up with each other. What does that say about how they feel about their relationship? They're just saying what comes to mind because they heard someone else say it. Or people saying things like, oh, well, I'll know this person when they come along. You prepare for an entire career with a master's degree, and you're just going to wing it when it comes to the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with? I mean, what the hell is that, right?
Yeah, and I think another important aspect of what you just said is how normal it is in our society, and probably a lot of societies around the world, to have a bad relationship where people just think that's the way it is. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. You can learn to have satisfying, healthy relationships, and 10 to 30% of people are already doing it. It's just not the norm. And if it was a norm in our culture to have a good relationship, then you and I probably wouldn't be doing the same job.
Yeah, I think in certain circles, it's kind of part of the bro code. A bunch of guys sitting around at a bar in Chicago bitching about their wives. It's like cool to have a bad relationship with your wife because we all do. And, that's just not reality. Lots of guys really do enjoy their relationship with their wives. And yet you see all this strife and marital drama, especially in Hollywood. And of course, you mentioned having divorced parents. This is being demonstrated to kids as normal. Parents don't get along. They end up splitting up. Someday you'll go and do the same thing. I remember I was talking to a bunch of teenagers one time, and one of the guys actually said this. I'm not making this up, okay? He said, yeah, I think I'll go ahead and get married by the time I'm about 30. And then about 42, I'll divorce her and marry a younger woman. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This guy's already got his divorce planned out as a kid. I mean, where did that mindset come from? It had to come from somewhere, right? But it's just toxic. And yet you hear people bitching and complaining about their relationships as if it's an incredibly positive thing to be chit-chatting in that way because it's some sort of, male bonding session. It's really crazy. And women, of course, do it too. They'll sit around and complain about their husbands. Emily's had women over for coffee or whatever, and make a bunch of pancakes for the toddlers running around and have kind of a play date thing. And she'll tell me these women are saying horrible things about their husbands, right? And she doesn't know what to say except kind of shrug her shoulders and be supportive, I guess, because our relationship is such that Emily and I don't ever insult each other in private, let alone in public. I mean, we bicker. We don't have this fairy tale Disney prince, Disney princess relationship. Well, I'm not good looking enough to be a Disney prince anyway, but that's beside the point. But in real life, our kids are being modeled a relationship where the parents have the freedom and the comfort level with each other such that we will bicker. We will be, quote unquote, hangry with each other, but we trust each other. We know each other. We get each other. So the truth of the matter is we love and we adore each other. We're very affectionate with each other. Sarah and John and Emily and I have family hugs together spontaneously, and the kids just absolutely love that. And someone will announce it. They'll go, family hug, and everybody comes running. Usually Sarah, my youngest 7-year-old. And that's because we really adore each other. And you know what? The amazing part is the kids don't insult each other. You don't have the kids going, I hate you. You're the worst brother ever. I wish you never would have been born. They'll argue about stuff. They'll get on each other's nerves, but there's genuine love and respect. And I think that that's a great place to start if you're building a relationship with someone. And it helps the woman feel more comfortable with you, safe and secure, which is a highly underrated way to keep a really hot, sexy, wonderful, sharp woman around in your life.
100%. And I'm glad you brought that up because in my book, I actually talk about the 4 factors that keep a woman in love with you.
Oh, I got to hear these because I got 4 of my own.
I mean, first of all, you have to make her fall in love in the first place, because if she's not in love with you, then this stuff doesn't work. This stuff doesn't raise her interest in you. It just maintains it. So it's kind of a shift in gears from the attraction phase. But there's 4 specific things that maintain her interest or keep her in love, if you want to talk about it that way.
Well, hold on a second first. What does falling in love mean to you?
Okay.
That's a nice lightweight question, right?
Sure. Yeah. No, from my perspective, as kind of more of an academic minded person, for me, it just means that if you look at a kind of scale of female interest where a 1 is she's just barely kind of a little bit open to you maybe, and like a 5 is kind of like she's interested in you, but she's not sold on you yet, then what I mean by in love is her interest in you reaches 9 out of 10 on that scale or higher. And there's specific things that allow you to figure out if she's at that point, which is also in my book. And then once she reaches that point, then you can maintain that level of interest indefinitely, assuming that you implement this maintenance program that I'm talking about, which is these 4 factors. And the first one is respect, which you just talked about. And you should respect her from the first date, of course, because if you don't respect her, then that lowers her interest in you over time, but it doesn't raise it. So this is even more important later when she's already in love with you. If you don't want her interest to drop over time, you have to keep respecting her. And a couple of ways that you can actively do that right away are number 1, when you're out with her, when you take her on a date or whatever you're doing, you're just out with your kids or whatever it is, don't check out other women while you're with her. I know that might sound obvious or silly, but a lot of guys do this and it's disrespectful to a woman. And so if you don't do that, that is going to help you maintain her interest in you. And then another one is what you talked about, don't say bad things about her or talk about what you do in the bedroom with her behind her back, like that other dating coach did in his newsletter. That's not respectful of her. And it shows her that she kind of can't trust you. It makes her feel kind of bad inside of her stomach. And over time, those things lower her interest in you. And then, if it gets too low, then you'll start to have big problems with her or she'll leave you. And you want to keep her interest in you as high as possible.
Well, all of this is predicated certainly on the concept of self-respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if she doesn't respect herself, she's going to hold it against you for trying to respect her. That's just really screwed up, but there are broken people out there, men and women, who feel exactly like that.
Yeah. And, here's the thing. If a woman has a lot of unhealed scars and baggage, it's going to be hard to build the kind of relationship that can keep you satisfied over the long term. I'm not saying it's impossible if she does a lot of her own personal growth work, but I think that brings up another really key point in relationships. It's maybe, I don't want to say impossible, but let's just say it's impossible practically to change another person. And so I think you should take a look at who this person is right now and ask yourself if you want to be with them the way they are, not the way that they could be. And I think a lot of people are like, well, she's good looking. I like this thing about her. I like this thing about her. but they kind of ignore the stuff that's not going to allow him to have a good relationship with her. And then they end up kind of stuck with her. And so I think take who the person is now and make your evaluation based on that, not something in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a whole show recently about how people end up with the wrong person, and that was right near the top of the list. I just am smitten with them. I'm infatuated by them, so I'm going to overlook all the flaws that are certainly going to come back and crush this marriage like an aluminum can sometime within the next 2 years max.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are your other factors? Give me the rest of them.
Okay. So the second one is positive attention. And this is probably the most important one in terms of her feelings for you, like keeping them fresh like they were when you first were dating. And it's also the one that a lot of guys ignore, especially in the United States right now, because it's really easy to do when you get busy. So when you get into a relationship with a woman, you kind of slide into a routine most of the time, and you kind of stop doing a lot of things that you did to attract her originally, and you stop going out, and you have a busy schedule, and you start taking her for granted, and maybe she does the same with you. And people say that love fades, but it fades mostly because we just stop doing the things that creates those feelings. And so one of the things that I recommend doing is continuing to date your girlfriend or wife. So just because you're in a relationship with her doesn't mean you can stop taking her out now. You should continue to do that as often as you can, as long as you want to be with her, because having that 1 or 2 hours of just pure fun each week or two, where you take her bowling or you go out for an ice cream or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. But if you keep creating these dates and asking her to join you and taking her out on a date, she's going to still feel that same way that she felt about you when you were first doing that a lot longer. And so positive attention involves a lot more than that. But that's probably like one of the biggest things that you can do to keep that relationship fresh is just continue to date her. And one thing that I like that your family does is travel a lot, because studies have shown that if you share new experiences with each other, that's probably the thing that builds the strongest possible emotional connection between two people. So whenever you can take her to do something, whether it's traveling to a new country, trying a new restaurant, seeing a new band, whatever it is, anytime you can take her to do something that's new for both of you, do that, because that's also going to help keep your relationship strong.
Well, you're talking about active, bold relationshiping is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
A lot of people get into relationships, and you're right, they're lazy. That's what you're basically saying. They fall into this routine. They wake up tomorrow morning and do the same thing they did yesterday, and 40 years later, they're still doing it. They Netflix and chill for 40 years. The first date is Netflix and chill, and so is the 50th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, assuming Netflix is going to be here in 50 years. God knows what we're going to be doing in 50 years, the way things are going. But, you know, that's pure laziness. That's just not doing the work. Now, famously, we talk about how relationships don't feel like work around here. And I think that's because of the other factor you brought up, which is living this active life together. You don't fall into the trap of a routine out of pure laziness. But then again, you don't just go through the motions and say, hey, you know, let's try a new restaurant on Friday night, Freddie. Okay, Denise, let's go do that. You know, not something like that. But hey, let's make plans. Let's go out into the wilderness. Let's get out of our comfort zone. Let's challenge each other a little bit. And that shared experience, those new experiences, almost force you to get to know each other better. And that brings me to another point, that people aren't only lazy about establishing relationships and indeed maintaining and building them too. They're scared. People are like, okay, I finally have someone who will put up with me. I have my ball and chain. I have my vieja, my old lady, right? And I don't want this to get screwed up with facts, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to get under the hood and see what's going on under there, because I might not like what I see. There may be something broken that I would have been better off not even knowing about. So I'm not going to go deep with this person, even though I'm married to them or I'm in a long-term committed relationship with them, however it's defined. I want to know as little as possible. I want to know only as much as I need to know to keep this relationship going and to put on a happy face for everybody. Well, that's ridiculous. You have got to be bold enough brave enough, let's just throw it on the table, to talk to this woman, to get to know her, to learn what her hopes, fears, dreams, etc. are, not only so you can know you're in the right relationship with her, but so you can lead, so you can be a freaking man, so you can help her feel safe and comfortable with you. Because how in the world can a couple feel safe and comfortable with each other if they don't even know each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right. And, if you don't want to do the work, you probably shouldn't be in a relationship. Just stay single and enjoy your life, because maintaining female interest takes work. And if she doesn't have strong feelings for you inside, you're going to have a hard relationship with her anyways. And here's the thing. It takes work, but the work is worth it, because what you get out of it is better health, a better relationship. It adds happiness to your life. A woman can't make you happy, but she can definitely add a lot of happiness or make your life worse. And so you get a lot more out of it than you put in my opinion.
Yeah, that's another one of those cliches. She can't make you happy. You can't make her happy. But I'll tell you something. She sure as hell can make you unhappy.
Yeah.
We've talked about that enough already. What's the third one?
The third one is positive humor. And so the reason I put the word positive in front of humor is because you can use humor to kind of avoid talking about things and to put people down. But what I'm talking about is maintaining kind of a general attitude of light playfulness around everything and not taking yourself too seriously, not taking life too seriously. And research shows that if you're able to use humor in a positive way, it kind of creates a protective buffer around your relationship. And so not only does it make your relationship more fun and also healthier, it also helps you maintain her interest in you. And so when you take her on that date every week or every 2 weeks that I was talking about earlier, the most important thing about that is that you don't talk about all the negative stuff that's happening in your life, how your boss just gave you a hard time at work today and you have bills that are unpaid and whatever it is. You don't do that when you take her out. It's very important when you take her on a date to have a fun, light, playful time. And that is one of the most important things that helps you maintain female interest as well.
Man, let me tell you, I am firmly convinced that playfulness is the catalyst of all wonderful things a woman's dying to do for you.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, just start making the list. If you can ignite her femininity by bringing out the playful in her, she's going to feel more comfortable with you. She's going to feel more charmed by you. She's going to want more of you, right? If she's charmed by you. And she's going to want to rip your clothes off and ravish you.
Yep.
It's just how femininity works. And I think that's just an amazingly intuitive thing for you to say. And I'll tell you, the two words I use with guys around this subject are warmth and levity. If you can just be warm and friendly, not negative and biting humor, and keep things light instead of heavy, or pesado, as they call it in Spanish, here near the Mexican border. If you're pesado, you're just kind of a bummer. Pesado literally means heavy. Right? Mm-hmm. It's like there's a black cloud hanging over you, like schleprock. If you're warm and light, you almost can't lose with women. Now, I believe that humor in general is a superpower with women. It covers almost any other deficiency as long as it's the right humor. And the right humor is quick, witty, ironic humor that's warm and light, right?
There you go.
You don't want to be Lewis Black with women. It won't go very far.
Yeah, it's so funny because there's a myth in our society that says that love is this kind of heavy, serious thing, and I completely disagree with that. I think love is light and playful for sure.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from the show so far. I think you just hit the nail on the head, Bubba.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate
What's the
that.
fourth one?
Last one. This is kind of just a general term that lumps a few things together. You can call it support or something like that, but I call it teamwork.
Sounds like you need a new mattress.
Yeah. Well, so the acronym for this is REPEAT, RPPT. So I like to use teamwork because the T fits in really well there. And then you can remember that you have to repeat this as long as you're with her. So you have to keep doing it. And teamwork just means that you're fair and equitable with her. If she cooks you dinner, you do the dishes. You want to find a woman who's naturally giving in her personality, because that's very important to a man over the long term. And then you want to make sure that you don't take advantage of her and that you reciprocate and that you work with her and that you decide things together. when you have a big decision to make, you make sure you talk to her about it before you just go ahead and decide. You decide how you're going to do the things around the house together before it becomes a problem. And you kind of treat each other as equal teammates that are facing the same direction and facing challenges together versus kind of adversaries who are fighting against each other.
Excellent. Now, just for the sake of clarity, when you talk about repeat, RPPT, that acronym represents all four of what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, that's the entire female interest maintenance program.
Right. So the first one was respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second one was positive attention. The third one is playfulness. And the fourth one is teamwork.
That's right.
All right. See, I was listening. Now,
you got it.
Now, another thing that I noticed is, indeed, you are yet another voice on this show talking about the truth and saying very similar things to what we say around here without really ever having the benefit of having heard it all, which only proves that there is a real actual code to this. There's a way this works. It's not somebody's spin on it. It's not a bunch of opinion. And what I'm specifically referring to here is how you brought up both optimism and generosity, which I am on record as saying are two of the cornerstones of relationships. And you brought them both up. I just think that's fascinating. Because optimistic, generous people will think the best of each other, and they'll want to do right by each other, and they'll want to give to each other. And you just brought that up. So there must be something to this, gentlemen, because guests keep coming on this show and they keep bringing up these secrets to relationships. And these are guys who are in good relationships. Remember, both Jim and I have women in our lives who love us and adore us and who we love and adore in return. There's something to this. There's a pot of gold here for you guys. To get into the right relationship with the right woman, make sure you're not fooling yourself. Make sure you're not kidding yourself and get it right. So with that, what I want to do is point you to Jim's new book, The Happiest Man in Hollywood, which is hot off the press. You can get it on Amazon. And you can also get it by going to his website, which is datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com. I'm going to make it a lot easier for you. I'm just going to send you to www.mountaintoppodcast.com/Wolfe. It's actually with an E on the end, WOLFE. You know what? Just to make it easy, put an E on the end or not. It'll still point you to the right URL. And Jim, I love how you talk about relationships. I can tell just in the sound of your voice that you absolutely adore the woman in your life, and she adores you in return. So it's been a pleasure to have you on this show to enlighten these guys with some of your wisdom. Great stuff. Thank you.
I've really enjoyed being with you, Scott, so thank you as well.
Yeah, man. And guys, as I always invite you to do, but some of you have not yet done, go ahead to www.mountaintoppodcast.com and download the incredible depth of goodies I have for you there, including free reports and show notes from every guest that we have here. There's also an Amazon influencer page link there that allows you to grab all the books from all the guests in one place. It's kind of a neat little virtual X and Y Communications Mountaintop Podcast bookstore that you can go browsing through. Good stuff there. And be sure to schedule your call with me, 25 minutes, absolutely free. I'm exactly the kind of guy you think I'm going to be when you get on the phone with me. I love talking to you guys. You'll be treated with respect. I want to hear where you're coming from. And if coaching is a good plan for you and I both, and we can get you the results you really want to get and make that worth your while and help you start living the dream with your own dream woman, then let's make it happen. That's all there for you at www.mountaintoppodcast.com. And be sure to join our Facebook group too. That's starting to really grow and expand. And the guys there are good men of character, great conversations, and not just big, heavy, pesado conversations about what do I do about this woman in my life, etc., but a lot of light, fun things are being talked about and shared there too. Great group of guys, great Facebook group, very different than some of the ones you may be already a member of elsewhere. So check that out at Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. And until I talk to you again real soon on the next episode of the Mountaintop Podcast, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X and Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X and Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.